Well, hey everybody, it's Chris DeFirio with Keys to the Shop, and welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at La Marzocco. They have been making espresso machines by hand in Florence since 1927. So we're talking about nearly 100 years of quality espresso equipment. Their espresso machines are known for dependability, for innovation, for beauty. And on the innovative part, I mean, we're talking about machines like the KB90, for example, with scales built into the drip tray. You've got the ergonomics of the straight-in locking portafilter. You've got a lot of different configurations of machines, from the Linea to the Linea PB, the Leva, and all sorts of machines that are designed for either very highly technical or very simple setups and capacities. And therefore, anything you need for your cafe, you can find at lamarzocousa.com. When it comes to espresso equipment, I think you should be looking at La Marzocco. Check them out and reach out. Info at lamarzocousa.com is their email, and their sales folks will be really happy to talk with you and get you fit with the right machine for your needs. Now, we're also sponsored today by our friends over at rattleware.com. So small wares are a big deal. When they don't work, it really sucks. When they work, you can work. This is the kind of bedrock philosophy of Rattleware, is that they are in the background helping what goes on in the foreground. The coffee service, the work you do as a craftsperson, is supplied by people like rattleware.com. So whether it's whisks or knock boxes and shot glasses and pitchers, whatever your needs are, check them out over at rattleware.com. Now, today I wanted to talk about something I was reflecting on just a second ago, and I thought this would be a good shift break episode. And so here we are. We hit record and we do the shift break. Today is the first day back from Coffee Fest in Los Angeles. I had some great conversations with fans of the show, also just professionals who are first-time listeners that they didn't know about Keys to the Shop, past clients I met there as well. And it was really fantastic to get some great coffee, talk coffee, and life together. It was awesome. So thanks, everybody. Now, I had a lot of different speaking engagements that I was doing. There was 5 in total, and some of them were workshops. A couple of the workshops on delegation as well as on systems. And the delegation workshop and the systems workshop are almost like a combination in a sense. They're two sides of the same coin, because what they are is somewhat of, forgive me for saying this, but it's the key to being able to find effectiveness in your actions in your cafe. When you have ideals, when you have a goal, you have to have some kind of a system to be able to get there. And that includes all of the little pieces that make up the big piece. It also means that you need to work with people. You need to delegate to people, and those tasks, as they have SOPs and they have checklists and workflows, are therefore going to be part of the conversation you have with people. It's part of how you determine that we are doing a good job. And when I go to a coffee shop and we do a coaching arrangement, right? We sometimes go to coffee shops with these consulting gigs, and we'll go there for a few days to do an assessment. And when I do an assessment of a coffee shop, and that's like the first step, then there's the coaching with the leadership team and sometimes just the owner. What I like to ask is, how do you know you're doing a good job? And the answer is always a little bit vague. It's a little vague because people have just the assumption that if you don't hear from somebody, that you're doing a good job. And if you are hearing from somebody, it's usually because you're doing a bad job. Just a shame. You should go see our episode. I think it's called the affirmation vacuum, where there's not very much positive affirmation. I think 70% of your communication with your team should be celebratory, encouraging, specifically praising and affirming work that is currently being done and has been done. And it's a major part. 30% probably is going to be guidance, working through challenges, problem solving. Maybe there's some need for disciplinary action, but majority of what we do has to be on that other side. Now, back to our topic, though, I wanted to mention something that seems a little daunting for most people when we're talking about systems, we're talking about delegation. It's overwhelming because it's different. And so far, up until this point, we have been able to tolerate the level of operation that we currently have. Actually, we've become very accustomed to even the dysfunctions of our business. They're beloved dysfunctions. It's the devil we know. And then we seek to make change and we seek to get better. And it's almost like we only seek to get better so that we can reflect on how proud we are of ourselves for seeking to get better. But we don't actually want to. We don't actually want to take the step to move away from the comfortable dysfunction into the uncomfortable better version, because we know intuitively that it's actually not going to be perfect either. It's just going to be a little bit better. And there's always going to be new problems. And so in the back of our minds, we're thinking, well, if there's new problems up there and there's not an absence of problems, why not just stick with the problems I have now, but still on the side kind of complain about them? See, that's something we all deal with. I think it's human nature. We seek comfort, but we also seek growth. And you can't actually have 100% of both. And so if people have invested all this time and energy to sit in a seat and listen to somebody talk about change and growth, that's the part of them that they need to continue exercising even when they get back from a coffee fest or from listening to a podcast or reading a book or having a meeting with your staff where they reflect back to you something that was difficult to hear but necessary. There is a next step that needs to be taken. And that next step is the first step in becoming the kind of person who has the strength to handle that next level. This is why I encourage most of the people in my sessions to not use ChatGPT to do any of the work that we talked about them doing, because they need to struggle through and reflect and, infuse their own DNA and the DNA of the culture and the community and their staff into what they're doing with purpose and intent. And the struggle is what fortifies and builds the strength to follow through and be accountable to the thing. If it's easily accessed and easily obtained, it's way more difficult to follow through on because it's not yours. And it was simply downloaded. You didn't struggle for it, therefore the value of it is way less. So the first steps that I talked to my audience about, the people that took the workshops with me, was to simply start with one or two changes that you can thoroughly and with abandon dedicate yourself and your team to in the most simple of ways. Make it small. I was referencing James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, for this a lot of times, which was essentially just talking a lot about you can start with just one small fraction, an atomic level in size, atomic level habit that over time will grow if you do it faithfully and consistently. You become the kind of person who does this. If you write every day, you become a writer. It doesn't matter how much you write, you simply are the person who writes or takes a walk every day or determines to be more thankful and therefore writes down something you're thankful. We broke out our thankfulness journals here at my house. We're trying to do it every morning, and we've been actually doing all right. We write down and we share what we're thankful for with each other after we're done. We have some coffee while we do it, my son and my wife and I. And sometimes I look and I eye those journals with all the things on my mind, and I think, today's not the day that I'm going to sit down and do this journal. But then something in me says, if you make an excuse now, what's going to happen is they're going to get old and dusty again. And you're going to go back and say, okay, the next entry is going to be a year from now, which is actually what happened. It was 2 years until we picked those back up. I just kept passing the stack of our journals in the hallway every day. And eventually I just lost track of them. Now, how many of us have journals that are actually manuals or the programs or workflows and things, tools that we already have, that we feel, it's almost too embarrassing to go back to it. But we need to return back to that. It's okay. It's like in meditation where they say, if your mind wanders, return back to your breath. That actual flexing of the muscle to return focus is the whole practice, right? That's the point. And this is the point of what I'm saying today. You might have a lot on your mind and there's a lot happening, and you will deal with it probably in the way that you normally deal with it. But if you allow just a little fraction of time to be that change, that maybe it's the one-on-ones that you say, okay, that's the one thing we're going to change about our business. We're going to dedicate ourselves to doing one-on-ones with our staff, to lean into the relationships with our staff, just 15 minutes every week or every 2 weeks. But it's going to be something that we have said, as long as we are physically able, it is never going to go away. This is what we're doing from here on out. That's the important part. Make it small, but make it consistent and dedicate yourself to it. And you'll see what we call the aggregation of marginal gains. You get marginal gains. You don't really see a whole lot of shift and a difference. But if you had been doing that thing for the last 5 years, intuitively, we know that you will have been a different person or a different business. And so this is why I'm talking to you today on Shift Break, is that there's a lot of insights that you've got from this show and other resources, other shows. And now it's time to actually take a moment to carve out that time, especially those of you who went to Coffee Fest. If you went to Coffee Fest, you know you can carve the time out for 15 minutes a week or 30 minutes or so forth. Whatever time you need, you know you can do it if you can actually visualize the advantage of doing this, especially far down the line. Exercise delayed gratification. Believe in the future version of you that benefits from taking the stuff you learn and putting it into practice every day or every week, whatever that change is that you know you need to make. So take the first step, make it a small one, but make it consistent. And that is the message today for Shift Break. Your cafe is built up of the habits of a lot of individuals around a common goal. And therefore, the habits that you, as the owner, take to put into that system, those habits are magnified times however many customers or however many staff you have. You have a lot of influence, and this is one way of many, but it's a key way that you can make good on the authority you have and use it as a service to others. And so thanks, everybody, and I'll see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break, from Keys to the Shop.